Sujimoto in Nigeria, young man who is doing big things in the real estate sector, Sujimoto as he's called, is now under fire over alleged fraud by the Enugu state government, alleging that, and has petitioned the EFCC. Just to give a recap of what has played out from the statements on both sides. The Enugu state government said they contracted him to build a number of smart schools to the tune of 11 billion naira. Gave him upfront of 5 billion naira to execute the project within a timeline of about 6 months or so that this September or so, schools will resume, students will resume in these smart schools, the building only. Well, they said he didn't deliver on those projects. He was nowhere to be found when they tried to reach him to have an understanding of what was playing out. They visited the place to see the progress of work. They say it was substandard in some of the things that were done, and more and more and more and all of that. Well, Sujimoto has come out to say that is a misrepresentation of the fact. Look, I did my bid. Well, the cost at the time we agreed for the contract was not the same, and I had to, deploy resources on other projects of mine and back and forth. Well, all of this will be handled by the EFCC now. Today or tomorrow, both sides will be speaking with the anti-graft agency to know how to resolve the issue. But a gentleman has a different perspective, and he's looking at something beyond this particular deal. And well, let's bring him in. Akintunde Babatunde is Executive Director, Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, joining us virtually. Mr. Akintunde, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I know that you're not just looking at 11 billion, 5 billion, and it's in between. You're looking at things in between the line, and that has to do with procurement processes, procedure, how government bids, and all of that. Help us make sense of what is of interest to you that will be of benefit to the public.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that when discussions like these happen, you ask yourself, why do we always have conversations like this in Nigeria? First, to start from the declaration from the EFCC of Sujimoto, when that happened, the narrative was that it's been alleged of money laundering and a lot of other things. So it begged the question as to what was going on. So when Sujimoto came on board to explain that, this was about a deal with the Enugu state government, and a few things that he said, there were a lot of red flags in there. First was to mention that the costing of the projects was not going to be sufficient for implementation, and when he made that clear to the governor, it was promised that don't worry, by the time you're done with this, there are bigger projects for you. That is the first red flag. A private company should not be executing projects when the funding, when the costing wouldn't be insufficient to carry it out. You're not government. Why would you accept for such kind of engagement in the first place? That's the first red flag. Then the second red flag is the fact that there's a promise of a bigger project. You have not delivered on the first project, then you're being promised that don't worry, even though the costing is not going to be sufficient for you, you would get compensated in the next project. Then that has already made a mess of public procurement processes. Then we got to see the statement from the Enugu state government that says, ignore this guy. The contract is about 11 billion. Government even paid upfront of 5 billion. That's another red flag, because a public procurement process does not require that you should pay upfront of 50%. In fact, you shouldn't pay beyond 30%, according to the procurement laws. Another red flag: why would government be so, nice, to pay an upfront of 50%. Another red flag was that they both agreed that the project would be completed in 6 months. how do you get to start a project from the scratch, a building project from the scratch, for that much money, and then you're gonna get it ready in 6 months? Are you a magician? That's not gonna be possible. That's another red flag. Then another red flag was that the state government had claimed that when the bidding was happening, he had issued a Jais Bank bond, but the payment was made to a Zenith Bank account. Why would I mean, the reason why there's a bond in the first place would be that if the contractor, the procurement procedure says when you get upfront payment of about not more than 30%, then at each milestones, so there are milestones, how many projects are we going to get on? By the time you are done with this number, you will get, mobilized for the next one and for the next one. And if peradventure the contractor defaults, then the bond would insulate the government from, getting into this kind of situation. So the fact that the payment was made to another bank account other than the bank account that was issued with a bond, why was a payment made? Whoever made that payment, whatever procedure led to the payment into the Zenith bank account, that needs to be questioned. That's another red flag, right? So you have about 5 to 6 red flags, and I think another red flag is the fact that all of this happened, and nobody, in the public, citizens, the media, civil society, did not get to know. There's no public record of the details of these contracts anyway, until we got to hear that EFCC declared Sujimoto, wanted. So another red flag is the fact that this company, does not have a track record for this kind of projects. So what led to the decision? How many companies bidded? Was there competitive bidding according to the law for that kind of amount? What process was it announced in a newspaper? According to the procurement procedure, those things are not in the public. So you have too many red flags that I think are potential, are issues that we should potentially interrogate, because we cannot start, dealing with this issue on the surface level without looking at the fundamental, collapse of the public procurement process. When you look at the level of total disregard for the law, when you look at the anyhowness and the arbitrariness that went into all of that, I think those are really, really, really questions that begs for answer that we should really, really interrogate.
Let me ask.
Very valid points.
Okay, Kaede.
But Jeffrey, go ahead.
No, Kaede, go ahead, please.
Sure. I just wanted to chip in and say, Akitsode, we probably have multiples of this happening across board in other states, even at the federal level, as we speak right now. So it's no shocker that we have abandoned projects, issues around that. It's when you really dig deep, you see these issues. I just want to be clear on what you have said. Are you saying that, in fact, the EFCC should not just be investigating the CEO of Sujimoto, it should also be investigating the Enugu state government? Is that what you're saying as well?
Absolutely, Kaede, and there's an interesting twist to what you said. A few years ago, the World Bank, introduced a program called the State Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Sustainability Project, SEPTAS. And that project, was a grant of about, I think the initial one was $750 million, then another additional $73 million that said, we need to encourage state governments to be transparent. So state governments would have, their procurement process on an online platform, open contracting platform, so that, once contracts are awarded, you get to see the details. It's interesting that a lot of states, started putting up procurement portal everywhere because they needed to access the grants. And a recent, report by the Foundation for Investigative Journalism showed recently that about 80 to 90% of those platforms are dead now because the state got the funding. They opened the portal for a few days, but when the process when the project finished, they pulled it down. That's not even the scandal. The scandal is that citizens started looking at the procurement portal. Then they were seeing, ridiculous amounts of money for ridiculous projects. They were seeing over-bloated contract costs. It's because of that, state governments are not even interested in being transparent. So they put those platforms down. So it's not just Enugu state government. I think that EFCC should, as a matter of, allegiance to the states, to the Nigerian state, and to the people, they should ask questions. How did Sujimoto got mobilized for 50% against the procurement law? Why was payment made into Zenith bank accounts as against the bond account for the bank that issued the promised bond in the first place? So those are questions. But generally, there is a culture of opacity in the way that public finance processes are, executed in the country. When I was actively on the field, conducting investigations, there was a time you would see projects, millions of naira allocated for those projects, and then you would get to know that the contractors were only there for a few weeks. They put down their equipment. You look at the procurement process, you see that the catchback had been released and all of those things, then you don't get to see them anymore. When they get to know that, some people came to ask questions, they will come for one day, they would be there, then they will leave again. We have seen reports in this country. We've seen reports where contract for the construction of classroom was awarded to a restaurant in this country. So you look at all of so there's a lot going on, at the subnational level, and it's so sad that nobody knew that a contract of 11 billion naira was awarded, and government was very generous. What we used to hear was that they awarded this contract, and we were not mobilized, but 50% upfront. Who does that? Who approves the payments, And so those are questions, and I think the FCC should ask questions from all parties involved.
And I'm sure they will do that questioning on our behalf, because there's a lot to ask. As you said, we can pick a lot of holes. In fact, as a matter of fact, one of the biggest red flags for me is that the bond was from Jay's Bank, payment was made in Zenith Bank. There's no way you will not, there's some complicity within the government itself for that to happen, because it's as simple as the law. So everybody must look inward. So the government also must need to answer questions. But I must thank you for bringing that very brilliant perspective as to processes and procedures as far as procurement is concerned, and transparency at the subnational levels, just like we check at the national level. Akintunde Babatunde is the Executive Director, Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.